Welcome, everybody, to Living with COVID. This is going to be a conversation with some older adults here in Brookline. My name is Michael Allen. I'm a social worker at the Brookline Senior Center, and I'll be moderating. The idea behind this conversation is that COVID-19 is resurgent. It seems to be something that's going to be part of our lives for a long time. And there are a lot of issues that come up with that, practical issues as well as emotional issues. And so this is going to be a conversation where we talk through some of those things. We're not doctors, and just important to say we're not giving you medical advice, but we are going to share some of our thought processes about this stuff. Also, before we get started, just want to acknowledge that this group does not perfectly reflect the makeup of the Brookline community, whether by race, gender, or a number of other, categories. And so it's important to acknowledge that at the outset. We have 5 folks here to have this conversation with us. All of them live in Brookline. All of them live alone, and we're going to go around and have some introductions. So Susan, would you like to lead us off?
Sure. My name is Susan Granoff, and I live in a 3-condo building. We don't have a backyard. I've been retired for over 10 years. I'm a retired attorney. I'm active in town meeting and on the advisory committee and on BrooklineCAN.
Thanks, Susan. Over to Fran.
Hi, I'm Fran Perler. I live in a 2-family Victorian. I've been retired for 5 years. I was a research scientist in biotech, running a lab. So I'm sort of the science geek here. I volunteer at the Senior Center, and I'm an associate member of the Council on Aging. And I think that's about it.
All right. Thanks, Fran. Over to you, Ruth.
Hello, I'm Ruth Seidman. I live in a 4-unit condominium building, and I'm retired. I was a science technology librarian, and I'm active in various community organizations.
Thanks, Ruth. Over to you, Bea.
Hi, my name is Bea Mikulecki. I live in a 100-unit condo building, which has a backyard and a swimming pool, although it's not open right now. And I've been retired from teaching for more than 10 years.
All right. Thanks, Bea. And Betsy.
Hi, I'm Betsy Pollock. I am a social worker, and I've been president of the Brookline Senior Center Board of Directors since before there was a senior center, since I was in my 30s, actually, which I am now not. And I am a recent retiree in December. And I live alone in a substantially big house with my new dog.
Well, we'll see if the new dog makes an appearance. Thank you all for introducing yourselves. And we're going to start off with something that I think has been a question for everybody, no matter who they are, which is grocery shopping. And so where is this group at in terms of, is it safe for me to go to the grocery store? And how have you been handling that? Betsy, would you like to kick us off with this question?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I gave it a lot of thought, and I know a number of my friends, have not grocery shopped yet, have everything delivered. But I decided to take advantage of the senior hours and to follow the guidelines of wearing masks and a mask and sanitizing and using hand sanitizer and going in with a list so I don't spend too much time. And I reduced how often I go. So I go once every maybe 10 days and I buy enough to make a lot of different meals. So I haven't relied much on takeout services. I mostly cook, which gives you something to do when you're living alone and you can't have as many social outlets. So I've been doing that, and I feel that I've conducted myself, I thought about the risk and felt that it was a reasonable risk to take.
I'm one of the other types. I have not shopped since March 20th. I went once to CVS and once to Trader Joe's, And I felt that I was fine, but there were other people who were sort of not paying attention to social distancing. So I got a little nervous. And so I've been having things delivered. And I've been using a volunteer from mutual aid, Brookline, which is a lovely service. I've been using Instacart, and I have a neighbor who every Thursday goes to Trader Joe's and picks up a few things for me. So between all of that, I'm getting everything that I need.
I go shopping for myself. I've been shopping all along. Because of my background in the laboratory, I'm really comfortable with the techniques to protect myself. So I wear a mask, I wear gloves, I know what to touch, what not to touch. I've been shopping for 2 to 3 of my peer group, both at the drugstore and Trader Joe's and the groceries. I also go early during senior time, if it's after 8, because it's not so crowded, and when things are short, the shelves are stocked in the morning. I've also found in places like Trader Joe, if you go Mondays, it's crowded. If you go Tuesdays or Wednesday, it isn't. Forget the weekend. And as I've gone out and done things, when people aren't social distancing or doing it, I just point it out to them, and most people are just, oh, I forgot. So, protect yourself and speak up for yourself.
Yes, Susan.
Okay, I've been really locked down since mid-March. I've basically left my home 5 times in total, and 3 of them would you go to the mailbox across the street from where I live. The other 2 times has been to go to Trader Joe's, which I go to every 2 months, and I really stock up, and I get everything else delivered through Peapod. And occasionally from a friend. For Passover, for example, she went to get Passover food for me. And but other than that, I just feel I have underlying conditions, so I just feel very risk averse when it comes to leaving my home. When I do leave my home, I have some great masks that I put on, and I disinfect everything. I've actually been disinfecting packages and mail that I get, but I think I may pull back a little bit on that in the future. But mostly, I've felt very comfortable staying home and not risking. When I get a delivery, one of the disadvantages is that sometimes when you order something, you don't get it, and so then the question is it worthwhile leaving your home to go pick it up in person? Even during senior hours, I kind of regard it as more risk than what I want to take, unless I really, really need that. For example, if I'm out of coffee, But other than that, I probably will not voluntarily leave my home very often.
Ruth, you want to weigh in?
Oh, yes. I have been having deliveries, and I've been using Instacart, and it's been fine. I don't always get exactly what I need or thought I needed, and then I make do with what I have. And it's not really a problem. So up to now anyway, I've decided to be very careful and have my food delivered, and I haven't used any. Have any meals brought in. I have just been buying groceries.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some of us are able to do this, but one of the people I shop for lives in a senior housing where they wouldn't permit people to go out. And I think if you look at what all our answers are, that you're going to find that for every question, we have a whole spectrum of what we're willing to do and what we're not. And it's based on our evaluation of our risk and how risky we think a situation is,
Mhm.
and how high on the risk scale we believe we all are.
Mhm.
So let's talk a little bit more about that, because I think that ties up the different answers well. How do you all think about this question of risk?
Well, as a social worker, that was one of the primary things that we thought about a lot doing geriatric social work, about training my staff to like do what we call the safety risk assessment. How much risk is a person willing to live with in order to maintain their independence? So, and people have a wide range of risks that they're willing to take. Some people don't want to take any, and some people want to take a lot. Now this, you can transpose that into this situation where you have to make that decision for yourself on a number of categories. So as in grocery shopping, so that everyone has to think about, well, what is my physical condition? How am I, how do I navigate the world usually? What am I willing to do, or what am I not willing to do in order to continue to live the way I live? And so everyone has to think of that for themselves and make a decision about it. And these are hard decisions to make. It's not a simple, it's not a simple process. Sometimes people are, sleepless. They're thinking about this all night long. What, is it safe to go to Trader Joe's in the morning? Am I, better off having somebody bring things to me? Can I do it efficiently? Is it too risky? Do I have too many physical conditions that prevent me from doing it? So, and do I have people I can ask, and am I comfortable asking for help, which is a whole other issue. Mm-hmm. So I think it brings into play a lot of factors that one kind of sometimes juggles and is aware of that you're aware of juggling these things, and sometimes it's just subconscious that you're just doing it without thinking about it overtly.
Mm-hmm.
So
that reminded me of a question that I have that's relevant to the risk taking, and that is, I have to go to a doctor's appointment next Monday. Now, how do you all feel about the risk of going to a doctor's appointment?
I have had a few occasions where I needed to see a doctor or a dentist, and I decided I would do that. It was more important to take care of the problem I had. And I was very careful. I did all the things you're supposed to do. And the places I went were being probably even more careful than I was. So I think you should, for myself.
What did you do about elevators? When you go to a doctor, did you have to ride in an elevator to get to the office?
The times I went, that wasn't an issue.
Franny, why don't you continue?
What I think is really important is that we separate out our emotional view and our practical view, and that sometimes we're afraid of doing things because we don't have the knowledge. And so what I tell people is do a lot of reading, or my friends rely on me and I send out a digest of safe practices. And I think that we all need to look at the town website or other websites and see what the doctors and the scientists say as to what is acceptable and what isn't. And to read several sources on that, because you'll get different opinions. And as we learn more about this virus, you'll also learn that we are changing our opinions. And I found that a lot of my friends, when I talked to them, were afraid of a lot of things. And then when we discuss the data, and I have articles to show them and reviews and what the doctors say, and I don't tell them what to do. I said, this is what is published, this is what is available, you decide. That that makes them a little bit more secure in their decisions. So my advice is read,
Mhm.
reasonable sources, not just Facebook. So read not just Facebook, read the town website, read even the New York Times is a little weird. Get yourself your local geek to ask questions, and make your own choices based on reality and facts as we know it, not just on, I'm afraid of something.
But could we please get back to the elevator question? I'm curious about that.
Okay.
So Ruth, did you say that you did get on the elevator?
No, the times that in the past that happened they didn't need an elevator. However, this week I went for a test, and the elevator in the the hospital that I was could take 4 people, and there were footprints on the on the floor of the elevator where to stand.
So some of the things that they're recommending is that if you press the elevator button, and there are a lot of people at the elevator, let it go and wait for the next one. Make sure everyone on the elevator is wearing a mask. Infectivity of people is a time-dependent thing. Mm-hmm. So if you're going for one floor and it's going to take a minute, and is everyone in a mask? How many people are there? Those are things you should think about.
Also, don't press the button with your finger. Use a knuckle or an elbow or a piece of material in between you and the button that you're pressing.
A pencil or the top of a hanger or something. But if you do use your fingers to touch anything, whether they're gloved or not, just go wash your hands. 20 seconds washing your hands with soap and the virus is gone.
How about you, Betsy? Where are you at in terms of thinking through going to the doctor or riding in an elevator?
Well, I haven't needed to ride in an elevator or go to a doctor, but yesterday I took myself and went and had a haircut. And I have to say that was a huge decision. And I had to think really hard about it, but there was an awful lot of hair, and I knew we had this event. And I thought, it's time. And so, but I did not go downtown to my usual hairdresser. I didn't want to go downtown and deal with this enormous protocol they had sent out. And I found a friend who recommended someone in my neighborhood. It was a one-woman shop who was taking people one at a time. And I went in, I was the only one there. And we both wore masks, and she was very efficient and, asked me what I was comfortable with. Was I comfortable having my hair washed? Was I comfortable? Did I want it to be outside or inside? Did I need it blown dry, which I absolutely did not, because I didn't want to have anything blowing around. I'm not a scientist, but I instinctively know that's probably not a good thing. And I feel, I feel so wonderful that I went and did that yesterday. And I also found someone in my neighborhood who it's nice to support neighborhood businesses. And I think I will continue to use her because she did a great job. So, but that was a huge discussion. I have had friends who've had people come to their homes and do it on their porches. People, I used to cut my late husband's hair, but there's no one here to use my own scissors and do mine. So, no, it's not an elevator and it's not a, not a doctor's office, but it was a big decision nonetheless of whether I was willing to take that risk and get a haircut.
I think it depends on how much you really, really want to do that, in terms of weighing the risk benefit. At a certain point in your life that may not be as important, but at a certain point, that may be the one thing you really want to do, and it makes everything else more doable if you can do that one thing. So I think it really varies from person to person. You kind of have to ask yourself, is this something that's really important to you? And that plays a role in deciding how much risk you're prepared to take. Because it doesn't sound like any of us are very high risk people. So I think we're all being very careful. And the thing that also weighs on me is that this is not, clearly it's not going to be something that's going to be over in a month or two. That this is really, we're in it for the long haul. And so that makes a difference in terms of calculating when you're going to see a doctor for just not because you're ill, but because you're doing some proactive thing. How do you schedule a mammogram? How do you, those sorts of things. And if you think that this is going to last another year, then you start, it helps you make different kinds of decisions than if you think it's going to be over in 4 months.
I think that's a really good point, Fran. I know I had a mammogram and a bone density, both of which have been delayed, and I'm not in and a colonoscopy, all of which I'm
definitely
not
in
to reschedule, figuring they can all wait a little bit. There's a tension between the community starting to open up, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts starting to say all these things are safe, and the fact that, as you so well put it, that this is going to go on for quite some time. And so you have to weigh what's being opened with with the risk that you're willing to take. And so, for example, I probably will go see my dermatologist because I always have skin cancers that need to be removed, and I got a notice that they're doing that. But I will not go and sit in a restaurant, even though the restaurants will be open, because I personally think that's too big a risk.
What about going to the dentist? What are your thoughts about that?
I'm struggling with that right now. I got a notice yesterday. And I'm
You mean for a cleaning, not because you have pain?
That's right, for a cleaning, yes.
Yeah.
Well, B, you've posed a couple questions. Tease out some of your thinking about the dentist.
So far, I've been delaying. I rationalize it that I had my last dental appointment about 9 months or 10 months ago, and they like to see me every 6 months. But I figured if I go a few more months, it should be okay. And by then they'll have learned even more about how to keep their dental practice really safe. I figure the restaurants and the dentists and the salons are all still learning how to keep things really safe, and they'll be inventing even more ways of doing that. So I'm basically procrastinating as far as the dentist is concerned.
But that's a really good point about how, in a sense, one of the things we're doing by staying home is buying time to let the scientists learn more about how you can transmit COVID, time for maybe a therapeutic to be developed. In a sense, we don't really know when any of this is going to occur. It's all very uncertain. But the longer, as you said, the longer we postpone doing things to a certain extent, the more opportunities people have to do whatever they're doing in a safer way, so that we will be less at risk when we finally get around to doing something.
I think that's a really good point. I know for myself, as I told you, I live alone in a house by myself. So being able to socialize with people is really important to me. I don't have a built-in community in a building. So I go to the dog park in the morning with my new dog, and everyone is wearing masks and standing, 6-8 feet apart. And we have an opportunity to talk to people while the dogs run around like, dogs run around, fetching and, jumping around and having a wonderful time. But that's been a wonderful thing for me, because at the beginning of this, I did not have the dog. and I felt extremely isolated. And now, when they talked about fresh air is good for you, the virus is much less apt to spread when you're outside, as long as you keep a good social distance. So I feel safe going down the 2 blocks to this dog park. I get every morning at 7 a.m. and I walk down there, and the dog runs around, and I get to talk to people. Nothing really significant, just daily chat. And it makes me feel connected and not so isolated. And it's made a world of difference to my sense of well-being.
So let's oh, go ahead, Susan.
No, I was going to say, to stay connected, I find I'm doing more telephoning of people, including old friends that I haven't necessarily spoken with in maybe a year or so. But somehow I find that telephoning has a personal connection that, and these are long calls sometimes, they're lasting sometimes an hour or so, but it just feels right now that maybe because I have more time, I'm home more and they're home more, but it just seems like a way, in addition to doing things like Zoom meetings and that sort of thing, but the act of just speaking for a long leisurely phone call feels right now for me.
Yes, I agree.
Oh, sure.
I have had a lot more long conversations than I used to have with some of my friends. So I think it's a very comforting thing.
I mean, for me, I found 2 things kept me from going crazy. One is I'm a nature photographer, birder. And so I've gone out every nice day and walked around in the afternoon in a park for 2 to 4 hours, hunting birds and, getting some exercise. And I've had to move a little bit further out of Brookline to get some less crowded places, because I find that not everybody is wearing their mask and social distancing. But the other thing that's important is to get your COVID buddy and find 1 or 2 or a few people that have the same risk level that you do, take the same precautions that you do, and get together with them. So I used to be part of a big weekly jigsaw puzzle group. And 4 or 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, we restarted a smaller version of the higher risk people, and we don't nibble. We wear our masks, we wash our hands, and we do our puzzles. And it's just very beneficial for everyone's well-being.
Where do you meet?
We meet actually in the house of the oldest person, who's, almost 90. And being the geek, I set the rules. We all wear masks. We all wash our hands when we go in or use Purell. We don't munch. If we bring something, if we want to drink something, we bring our own, so we don't leave anything at the person's house. We sit around a table, so we're sort of angled away. The oldest member of our group sits a little further, and everyone is just relieved to be able to have some time with somebody else. And we all have very similar levels of contact with other people. So that's good. And as many of us have said and brought up, this thing is going to last for 6 months or a year before there's going to be a good vaccine or a good drug or good treatment. And younger people and people who are not at risk are going to go out there. And in a way, it's sort of good for us, because they're going to all get sick and recover because it doesn't matter to them. And in general, if you can get enough of those young people sick and recovered, they might not be spreading it to us. So I think as seniors, we, as the state and the city open up, we can't really open up to the same degree because all of us, for one or more reasons, are high risk. But we can't just sit home and like go crazy. Or, you know, you have to go to medical appointments, you know, to have your skin cancer or whatever. I mean, you don't want to neglect your medical issues.
Fran, I think you made a really good point about your COVID buddy. I think that was a really great way to hear it, to put it. I hadn't heard anyone say it quite that way. And I was thinking about it while you said it. And I do have a few neighborhood friends, 2 couples, one woman who lives alone. And we have gotten, once the weather got nice, I am lucky to have a small garden, and I like to cook, and I've had them over, one person or one couple, and we can manage to get around my table, and I bring everything out, and you know, and it's been the most wonderful thing to share a meal with somebody.
Yeah.
How many of us actually own cars? Because I have a feeling that having or not having a car also makes a difference in what sort of activities we feel comfortable doing or can do. Who doesn't own a car? I don't own a car. Does everyone else has a car?
Yep.
Wow. Okay. Because I'm much more housebound because of that. Because I would not feel comfortable in a cab or an Uber or anything like that. And so I'm pretty limited to an area immediately around where I live, which is, you know, the main part of Brookline, the busy section of Brookline. So I don't really have much in the way of parks or things like that. So I'm not tempted to leave my home all that much.
Well,
and that may be part of it.
I mean, Betsy going to the dog park is Amory Pond. Amory Field Halls Pond. And I actually met a couple of friends for a picnic. They have these like 10-foot picnic tables, and we all sat in different sections and, you know, ate our meals and, you know, had our mask on when we weren't eating. So you have to explore the options in your neighborhood. Even just going around your block is good for you.
I've been really busy with government Zoom meetings. I'm on the advisory committee, and I'm in town meeting. And this week, I've had 6 meetings, you know, Zoom meetings already, and it's exhausting. And you know, so I don't, for some strange reason, I feel that gives me a kind of direct social contact, even though these meetings last several hours at a time. And there's work involved in preparing. So when I have time to be by myself, I actually love it. And that may be because I'm an only child. I grew up really doing a lot of things by myself. So in terms of temperament, I don't feel the need to necessarily have a lot of direct contact with friends. I can, as I said, if I call 1 or 2 friends a day, I feel fine. I feel connected. Plus, of course, I have my 2 daughters who live in New Jersey, and you know, and I get phone calls back and forth from them. But that's a different sort of phone calling. That's not all that different than what we would normally do even before this. I have another question. Do any of you know people who have come down with COVID, and has that made any difference in how you view your risk level?
So I just want to jump in, and before we move to this next question, which is a great one, I just want to draw Ruth back into the conversation and ask you, Ruth, how have you been managing seeing people during this period of time? You know, have you been doing it in person? Has it been all Zoom and on the phone? Where have you been at?
Yes, mostly on the phone, and my faith group has a chat once a week of small number of people, 8 people. So I do that, which is purely social. And I I get calls from family members and I initiate calls to family members. Mostly to get out, I just take walks, and that works out well, especially as over the months, the weather's changed, the trees have changed, the flowers have changed. So it's even I watch construction. So there's I watch what's different. And this week, a friend invited me over to her home, and we sat suitably distanced on her deck and had a very nice get together with her and her husband. So that was nice. And I probably will do more of that type of thing as time goes on, as the summer goes on.
Well, I think this is great that we can do this these days with going outside and and meeting friends at parks. And in my case, we have some benches in front of our building, and a friend will come over and sit at one end of the bench, and I'll sit at the other with our masks on and have a nice visit. But I'm just wondering what we're going to do when the winter comes. I think I'm going to start learning to wear a lot of heavy clothes and continue to go out there on the bench, because this has been a real nice thing to be able to meet friends out there.
What do y'all think? What are you going to do when the weather turns?
I'm probably not going to do anything different than, I don't like hot weather either. So, yeah, no, I mean, when winter comes, I'll probably still have all of my Zoom meetings. I mean, I think Zoom has made a huge difference in my life, because it really has provided me with opportunities to have extended working sessions with people and talking to people and schmoozing with people and seeing people. And so for me, it won't make that much of a difference. For me, what I'm going to miss will be, fall is my favorite season. I've sort of given up on spring in New England, but fall was something that I always look forward to. And I don't know how I'm going to react, whether by that time I will start going out just to experience fall and doing more walking into parks and things like that. I haven't decided, but I think it will depend on what else we know about the transmission. It sounds like the more we're reading, it's harder to get things just by walking around with having just brief connections with bypassers. So I think I will probably feel a lot safer walking around outside when the weather is the kind that I particularly like, which will be sometime in probably mid-September.
And
when you said about walking outside, they just published the viral rate for people who are in the demonstrations, walking in the demonstrations, wearing masks close together.
Right, it's low.
It was really low. It was by surprise. So that was really quite reassuring about the idea of going out and taking a walk and being near somebody and talking with someone while you walk is, something that's not very high risk. So that was really, I think that's really a wonderful thing. But to answer your question, Michael, I think that for me, I'll still be walking the dog. The dog still has to be walked, and no matter what the weather. But I'm sure glad I'm starting on the warm weather. But I think that there'll be more. It'll be dark earlier, and you'll naturally be in. But I must say, it's so interesting to hear how different people feel about the need to get outside. For me, it's like primal. I have to get outside. And for you, Susan, it's like not. You're very
well. Even when we didn't have COVID, I didn't feel the need to go out every day. That I'm a much more inside person whose leisure is reading and watching sports on TV. Well, not that there are any now, but I've not been a big outdoor person the rest of my life, so I'm not going to become one now.
So fascinating. But Michael, you did ask a question of, do we know anybody who's had COVID? And I'm on this Zoom group with a group of college friends, and we're talking every other Friday morning. And one of the couples lives in Manhattan, and the woman and her husband, whom I was my college roommate, and they both had COVID, and they were really quite ill, and they didn't go out for months. And so she keeps saying, well, I'm fine now because I've already had it. And it's, but it was frightening to me. That was really pretty frightening because of how sick she said they got. And so I think it's one thing to think, oh, what's my risk? And I'm a pretty healthy person, and I don't want to put myself in situations where I might get it. But I think I manage it pretty well, but I'm bold in certain ways and, cautious in others. And then to hear how sick they were, it makes you really think harder about how that would be if you wound up getting it.
I think that all of us are seniors, and we are at some level of high risk. And I've gone out in nature. I've gone out to the grocery store for my friends. But one of the things I really advise people, having experienced this a lot, and with time, I see less and less younger people wearing masks. However, in all of my meetings and walks, hundreds of people, there have only been one or two people who haven't put on a mask when I say, I point to my mask. You have to be proactive to protect yourself. If somebody is coming close and they don't have a mask, I say 6 feet, 6 feet, or mask for mama, or point to the mask. And there is only, in the hundreds of people I've come across, 2 people have been obnoxious. So we need to, the data is very, very clear. If everyone wears a mask, we'll be a lot safer. So as more people are going out, I have friends who have gone out and they go, people aren't wearing masks. What am I going to do? Well, maybe I grew up in New York, so I'm used to saying mask. And you have to defend yourself because it's your life. And most people, if you do it with a verbal smile or in a nice way, are very, very amenable. I'll go like this and, wave my hand and somebody will cross the street, or, I'll turn my back to them. So even if you find yourself in a situation where people aren't social distancing or wearing their masks, stand up for yourself. And if that fails, walk away and protect yourself, turn your back.
I think we're lucky to be living in Brookline, where I think most people have bought into the idea of wearing a mask. So I think, well, more so than in other areas.
Yes.
But I do think one of the concerns I have is that as time goes by, young people will either have come down with the infection and feel that they're safe, or things might drag on longer than we think. And we are the more vulnerable population. And I hate the idea on one level of being reminded that I'm vulnerable, because up until this point, I didn't see myself as being vulnerable. I saw myself as just being a capable older person who's doing pretty much what I want to do. And now all of a sudden, there's this label that we have. And not only is it a label, but it actually is true. So that makes it even more frustrating. We are, no matter what we think, we do have greater vulnerabilities. And I don't like to think of myself that way. But I find that it's a rational thing to do, which is frustrating, even if rational.
This bothered me a lot at the very beginning of the pandemic, because it seemed like every time I would read, and I read everything that I could, and it seemed like everything I read was saying, well, you don't have to worry unless you're old.
Except now they know that older people are only a small percentage of people who are at high risk. obese people, diabetes, minorities. So there are a lot of younger people that are at risk.
Or also, yes.
So I don't know if that makes you feel better or not.
Doesn't make me feel bad. I mean, it all makes me feel bad, the whole thing. But either I've gotten used to this hearing. I think I just don't pay as much attention anymore with it, and I know there's certain realism to it. No, it doesn't bother me that much anymore. It was right at the beginning. I just felt very sensitive about it.
Well, I feel a little bit better about it, really, because I've noticed how many businesses and organizations have been taking care to help provide special circumstances for older people. And so I feel kind of like, taken care of in a way by the setup. And it's true. I mean, we are all, I bet you every one of us is over 65 anyway. And we are in a special category, just like infants are a special category. We take care of them differently than we do other people. So I don't see this label of being called an older person as a very bad thing. It has some privileges.
I just hate the idea of needing help or needing to ask for help. That's not how I like to see myself. And I know this, in a way, changes the way I need to see myself, but I still find it hard, so that I don't like to ask people to bring me things. If I can order it, that's what I'm going to do. But I do understand that that this is reality, and until they come up with a vaccine or a really good therapeutic, we are going to be sort of we're going to be shunted aside in a way. Many of us will be not participating in family get-togethers that we might otherwise participate in, because we're going to be the designated people who are too vulnerable to risk that. And we haven't come to that yet, because everyone now has been feeling somewhat vulnerable. But at some point, I think it will require some, I don't know, it's going to make it a little bit harder to, in terms of how we see ourselves, to be able to see ourselves as being completely independent.
I'd like to respond to what you just said about not wanting to ask for help or feeling, and finding that difficult. And I think one of the ways to deal with it is to know how much you have to offer, and the wisdom that we have as having been around for quite a while. And, younger people, I find, are open to hearing about, well, how did you weather other things in your life? And we've all weathered things in our lives, whatever it is. And people, whether it's diseases or personal loss or grief or, whatever it is, people, you have a lot to transmit to another generation, and they will respect you for that. And so it's really reciprocating rather than taking. So you can give back by sharing what you know, and someone can give to you by, picking up something for you at the store. And that's how I try to think about it.
That is a good way of looking at it. That's helpful.
How does this question of accepting help sit with the rest of the folks in the conversation?
I'm becoming very good at it. There was a time when, if something needed to be done, I did it for myself. That was the story of my life, really. But as I've gotten older, there are a few things that I can't do so well. For example, if I have a suitcase to put on the top shelf of a closet, I can't do that anymore. And so it's a rational thing. I can't do it. I have to ask someone else to do it. And I'm learning how to accept help. And as I said before, there's something nice about feeling taken care of. For example, my daughter lives in Brookline, and she calls me and says, I'm going to Zaftig's to get some takeout. Should I get some for you? So I love that. She drops it off at my building and I have my stuffed cabbages. So I like this feeling of people taking care of me.
I basically went through that 2 years ago when my husband passed away. And I went through a time, I had to go through exactly that of just figuring out what I could do for myself, what I needed help with. And it was a process. So I guess I feel now I sort of know how to handle that. I'm not saying it never bothers me, but I'm more comfortable with it because I had a chance to work that through.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel the same way, Ruth. My husband died almost 9 years ago, and the thing that was well, aside from a long marriage and all the things that of having someone in your life, he cooked. He was a wonderful cook, and he didn't like me bothering him in the kitchen. So I didn't know that I liked to cook. He did all the cooking. And so now I'm like, people saying, well, what are you doing for food? Are you cook? You don't cook. And I said, well, yes, I do. And I like cooking. And so I explored a whole new avenue of activity. I just cook differently. So, not as rich. not such heavy meals. More of the, grains and fish variety rather than the meat and potatoes. So I had to buy all new clothes because I dropped 2 sizes. But it's you do learn and you do adapt, and you have that to bring to the table. Just what I was saying before about something that you weathered and lived through, and people want to hear from you and how you did that for yourself.
I find it's a lot easier when someone just offers to do something as opposed to asking someone to do something. And I have 1 or 2 really good friends who actually, one has a dog and often is out and about doing things. And she will just, say, oh, I'm going here, let me get you this or that. And so it's so much easier than literally having to pick up the phone and calling and asking someone to do something. So for anyone out there who has older friends and who is in the position to actually do things, it really makes a big difference when you're the one who can volunteer to do something. I think it makes someone feel less pathetic.
But you can help them with that. You can say, I hate to have to ask every time. Would you mind letting me know when you're going to the, Trader Joe's, or you're going to, I have a friend who goes to a farm, and buys fresh vegetables. Let me know when you're going to a farm because I may have some things I want. So now I get a call. We're going to Wilson Farms. What would you like? And so I say, well, eggplants, radishes, tomatoes, and I get a great package. So it's, but you need to let them know. So you can help them by saying, let me know when you go. So you don't have to ask every time.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
So we've got about 5 minutes left. And it's been a great conversation so far. And I want to give each of you a chance to say anything that's been on your mind that you didn't get a chance to say, make a few sort of closing remark type statements. So in any order, what's on your mind as we've been talking for close to an hour now? Yeah, Ruth, go ahead.
So I think it's like a lot of other things in life is striking a balance. And that's how I guess one solves all kinds of problems is not too much, not too little. And so that's how it is in terms of making decisions in these times. Try to weigh the options, to get what kind of information I can, and then decide. It's not going to be perfect. You won't come up with a perfect solution, but come up with the best you can, and then try to be comfortable with it.
I also find talking to my peer group and others, my friends, when helps me get a reading on whether I'm being smart or dumb in the things I'm doing, compared to how they feel. And it's just not like, why are you doing that? Or yes, do that. It's, I'm doing this because I'm taking these precautions, or I've read this. And I think that discussing it with people is the way of feeling confident about what it is you feel confident in doing, and helping you gain the facts and security that you need, because this is going to be for the long run. It's another 6 months, or it may be another year, who knows. And so we have to adapt. And one of the things that experience gives you is the ability to adapt.
Strangely enough, and this may seem very odd, but I have been feeling very grateful. And because I'm home so much of the time, life has slowed down to a certain extent for me. And it's given me a chance to really think about how much I actually have in my life and how lucky I am, for example, to be retired so that I don't have to go to work or be concerned about income coming in, or not have friends around that I can call. I mean, I've been feeling very lucky, and which in some ways is a bit strange, but that's generally, you know, I haven't been unhappy. I've been actually feeling good about most things, and fortunate, because you read about how many people are so ill and how many communities are so devastated. And I just feel very lucky to be living in Brookline and to be in a position where my daily life is pretty much under my own control at the moment.
Well, one of the things that I realized early on is that indeed this is going to be a long, long haul. And I realized that I'm going to be making adjustments and changing a lot of the ways that I do things. And so I decided I'd start keeping a journal. I keep it on my iPad. Mm-hmm. It's called Isolation Notes. And whenever I have a brilliant idea, or whenever something interesting happens, or when some big news comes about the virus, I write it. I don't write necessarily every day. But one of the things I'm interested in seeing is 1 or 2 years from now, when we hope we will be having a new normal, I can look back and look at the things that changed in my life and what I resisted and what I learned. And so that's one of the things I'm doing.
I think that what I've learned here just today is everyone has to think about their own personal level of risk, what they're comfortable with. And one of the ways to do that is to talk with other people whom you trust. The way we have been talking, I think it's been really useful just today among ourselves, that we've had such fascinating conversations about how everybody approaches things differently. And so I think for myself, I do talk, and I like to talk to people until that helps me process things. I'm also grateful, as somebody just said, for unexpected contacts. I have an older brother, kind of one of those tough surgeons who's still in the operating room at age 77. And he calls me almost every day or every other day. And that is totally out of the blue for me. I never expected that. And so it's this new tender relationship that I'm experiencing, that I'm just very grateful for. And then I have the Senior Center and Brookline seniors to advocate for. So I've been writing letters, and I've been writing letters to town meeting members and to select board and to the advisory committee, and trying to make sure we have the funds we need for our senior population. So that, and to make sure people are safe, and then when we open the center, it can happen safely. So those things give me a lot gives me a mission, which is important to me, to feel that I have something to contribute. So I think it's just a balance. And then I read a lot. Someone else said, so, reading is great, and sharing what you read with friends. And so, I think there's a lot to think about that when you have more time to yourself.
Well, I want to thank you all for coming today and participating in this conversation. I think it's been one that has highlighted the difficulty of navigating this time on a lot of different levels. There's the practical level, what is and isn't safe. There's the decision-making level, how are we thinking through things? And there's the emotional level of how am I going to be in touch with people, especially over time as this develops. So I think it's been a great conversation. Thank you to everyone who joined us. We will try to reconvene another Living with COVID conversation in the future, especially because this is an area that we're still learning about. Things are going to continue to develop. Our experiences are going to continue to develop. And so this kind of a conversation, I think, will stay valuable. So we will be doing that. Yeah, thank you to everybody who tuned in.
Thank you. And thank you for asking such great questions.
Well, you brought a lot of them yourselves, so I like that.
Thank you.
All right. So long, everybody.
All right.